which that in itself, the person and the officers who are. It's not fun.
And it's something that my brother was not the one who made us
There was so much going on. Upstart was everything. Upstart. First I saw Upstart Saturday. Oh my God. Well, it's funny. I looked at it. That's Upstart Saturday weekend. Oh, wait a minute. That's Derby.
Good evening, everyone. We'll open the Monday, October 16th meeting. Roll call show that Councillor Sullivan is absent and everyone else is present. Agenda review. I don't believe we have any additions to the agenda this evening. Moving on to approval of minutes of September 11th, 2017. Take a motion.
Move approval. Second.
All right. Any questions, changes, comments? Nope. Hearing none, I will take a vote on the approval of the minutes. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a vitulers license for Bell's IGA 6 Stillwater Avenue. Dave.
Hi, good evening, folks. I'm Dave Mylan, the Economic Development Director here in Orono. And, excuse me, for Bell's IGA, the property taxes and sewer fees are current, and the inspections have been done and staff's recommending approval.
Great. You're looking very dapper tonight, Dave.
Thank you.
Dapper Dave.
Would anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing A and move on to public hearing B, to consider a vitulers license for Max Convenience Stores, LLC, doing business as Circle K, number 7089, 53 Main Street.
Store 7089, all property taxes and sewer fees have been paid, and staff has done an inspection and is recommending approval.
Great. Anyone in the public wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none. Close public hearing B. Move on to public hearing C, to consider a vitulers license for Max Convenience Stores, LLC, doing business as Circle K, number 7021, 2 Stillwater Avenue.
Likewise, 7021, all the taxes and fees have been paid, and staff is recommending approval.
Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none. Close public hearing C. Move on to public hearing D, to consider a vitulers license for Brewers of the North, doing business as Aroma Joe's, 99 Park Street.
All taxes and fees have been paid, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing D. Move on to public hearing E, to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license and vitulers license for S&M Corporation, doing business as Thai Orchid, 28 Mill Street.
Yes, all taxes and fees have been paid, and inspections have been done, and staff is recommending approval. May see a trend here.
I'm seeing a trend, yes. Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? None. Close public hearing E. Move on to public hearing F, to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license to the University of Maine, doing business as Collins Center for the Arts, 5746 Collins Center.
All the inspections have been done, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. Dave, I had a question on that. Can alcohol be brought into the auditorium area? The way it was circled, I couldn't tell. Yeah.
If it's, I don't have the application in front of me, but it would, if it's of what the exact licensed establishment is. Sophia, you have a,
I have that copy.
Yeah.
We've been allowing people to bring drinks
Yeah.
This is the one that I don't think
That's a, I, the bigger one where it looks like you,
Yes.
you can bring it in.
it looks like it is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's allowed, I mean, it's a permissible use, as long as it's identified as a, you know, as part of their licensed premise.
Okay.
The challenge with it is that there's some restrictions that go with it, that sometimes they don't want to do that simply because of, you know, certain events where you're, where minors can be there, so.
Yep.
It makes it a little more difficult for them, but if they choose to do it, it's allowable.
Okay, perfect. Moving to the public, does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, close public hearing F. Move on to public hearing G, to consider a Class 1 Golf Club Spirituous Vinous and Malt Liquor License Special Amusement Permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and victualer's license for Penobscot Valley LLC, doing business as Penobscot Valley Country Club, 366 Main Street.
The fees and taxes have been paid. There was some updated re-inspections that needed to be done, and those have been performed by our fire marshal, and they passed successfully. And I would like to say that they did, this is both our code enforcement officer as well as the fire marshal commented that under the new ownership this year, that they found that the working relationship with them was much better than in years past, that they were very, very, very responsive to any concerns that they had. So kudos to them, please.
Nice to hear that.
Yeah.
I would just add that we now have a primary contact that is one of the owners, as opposed to simply on-site representative, which I think has helped a little bit. The other thing I want to give some clarification on is the personal property taxes that were assessed in August had a first payment due September 22nd of $1,950. They've not made that payment. However, under the way that we would classify property taxes, they still are not delinquent. They're not enough time has gone by. So I would think this would be a difficult one to condition the payment of the tax on.
Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none. Move to public hearing, close public hearing G, move on to public hearing H, to consider a 6-month moratorium ordinance extension on retail marijuana establishments and retail marijuana social clubs. Here he comes.
We have staff doing double duty.
Expected if you wearing a cape when you came out.
I don't know why that's not on.
There you go.
I lose my clicker all the time.
I got one for you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Avinash Rude, GS analyst here. You will recall that 3 weeks ago, in committee, we talked about this topic at length. Today, my presentation is geared towards helping you make a decision before you vote on whether or not to extend the 6-month moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments and social clubs. So I'll be briefly talking about drawing a distinction between medical and recreational marijuana, talking about what has happened to date, what was intended, and the rationale outlined in Orono's initial moratorium, what the state has done since the moratorium was passed, what we as a town have done, and questions you should consider before your vote tonight. Distinction between medical and recreational marijuana. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that recreational use of marijuana is now called adult use, and it's totally separate from medical use of marijuana, and the act, the main Marijuana Legalization Act of 2016 does not in any way affect the medical use of marijuana. Retail, the recreational use of marijuana became legal in Maine in November last year, which regulates 6 types of licenses now. Just until last month, we saw 5 licenses. Now, they have amended the law to have 6 licenses. First is cultivation of marijuana, which relates to wholesale cultivation of the cannabis flower, which can be sold. They have introduced a new use called nursery license, which relates to cultivation of saplings, clones from seed, and sale not at the wholesale level. So that's how it's different from cultivation at an industrial level. Manufacturing use is where a flower is processed using equipment to convert into edible product or a concentrate that can then be sold. A license for testing is a license where a lab tests marijuana for THC content, potency, or any trace heavy metals and certifies it. A retail use of marijuana, retail use is where marijuana is actually sold to the customer in a storefront setting. Social clubs is where marijuana can be consumed in a non-public place with other people, I mean on premises of a licensed facility. So tonight we are just going to talk about these 6 uses. Here's a timeline that you have seen before. The Maine Marijuana Legalization Act was on the ballot November last year, which passed. In anticipation of the passage of the act, Orono adopted a moratorium on October last year and was extended once, April this year, which expires tomorrow. So the moratorium on recreational use or adult use of marijuana expires tomorrow, and you'll be voting whether to extend it or not. After passage of the act last year, the state realized that there were inconsistencies in the way the act was written, and they adopted a state moratorium for a year, which goes until February 1st next year, so it will expire in 4 months. In my presentation here on, I'll be speaking about what was the rationale behind Orono's moratorium, the state's progress so far, and what we as a town have done towards learning more about how to regulate marijuana. So the 6-month moratorium that was adopted in October last year express purpose was to protect the public from health and safety risks from use of marijuana. In that moratorium, we declared that we will not accept, process, approve, or deny, or in any way act upon a license application, building permit, certificate of occupancy, special exception review, site plan review, for all the uses for recreational marijuana. The town's reasoning was that we needed time for drafting a land use code for locating these establishments and thinking about what are the compatible zones that we have currently and what might potentially we might consider. We wanted to study the correlation between existing medical marijuana dispensaries and caregivers, and where we might allow retail establishments and other uses such as cultivation, etc. We wanted to study what happens when marijuana, what health and safety risks happen when these establishments are poorly regulated, what happens when there are illicit sales to minors, and how to minimize those occurrences. We wanted to study criminal activity associated with this business, and there is a lot of literature on this that we have been looking at. The town also wanted to see, to evaluate existing infrastructure when it comes to this business, if it'll generate additional traffic and other municipal services. Here's what has happened just in the last 1 month and what's going to happen in a very short in future. So in September 13th, just a week or so before we met in committee, a revised amendment bill was published online, and in September 23rd, they met in committee, the Joint Committee on Legalization of Marijuana in Augusta met, and they had a public hearing and had a rapid fire vote wherein really substantial changes were made in the act itself. So, some examples are that they agreed on an opt-in concept for municipalities wherein by default you will have prohibition of all uses of marijuana, adult use of marijuana. The town would have to make affirmative action in terms of passing an ordinance to choose which uses they want to allow in their municipality. Another substantial change is that they voted to not allow drive-through home deliveries or internet sales of marijuana. They voted to, still this is in development, but there was a vote on the amount of tax and excise tax, buffers, etc. They will be meeting, they met on October 12th. They met on October 12th, and they have now published what these amended changes. On October 23rd, they will be meeting in full committee and then voting again. So the takeaway is really this is actually in development, and a lot of substantial changes are coming or have already been discussed. So what we as a town have done so far, we have a staff that we meet and discuss incoming developments, and we track bills. Jaina has attended workshops, so as I have in the past year, and we are continuing to educate ourselves with workshops from the main municipal association. We are researching evidence-based policies to reduce negative impacts of recreational marijuana. Some mapping exercises we have done and we have discussed within staff. Here are some questions that you should be thinking about before voting tonight. Is a moratorium necessary? Has sufficient progress been made? And is more time required? As far as if the moratorium is necessary, you would recall that we, as a town, a moratorium is a way to make a public statement that we do not accept applications related to recreational use of marijuana in Orono. So, and the main municipal association recommended a moratorium, a local moratorium on marijuana. Has sufficient progress been made? As I've said, we are still learning and thinking about this problem. Is more time required? As the law itself has been amended and discussions are ongoing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions? We are here to answer.
Council have any questions?
Excuse me, not really a question, but just to emphasize that our moratorium only affects retail sales and social clubs.
Yes.
Yes.
And growing manufacturing.
Yes. The language in the act called retail sales and social clubs, but it also affects these 6 uses that previously were 5, which includes manufacturing and testing as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't impact personal use and personal cultivation.
Right.
Question about the 6th license type, the new one, number 2 on your list, nursery. You said that was for not wholesale.
Correct.
It's like a greenhouse.
Yes.
No pun intended. But it's but that's for like a regular consumer can go and
Right.
and buy plants and do
They
their own.
can sell, but to a regular consumer, but they cannot sell a flower. They can sell saplings, seeds, clones.
So okay, gotcha. So someone can go and
Not-
start their own little garden and wait for the. Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Oh, I was going to ask the public. Did you have another question?
I have one more.
Oh, sure.
Question, actually, just to be clear, if in fact we do extend the moratorium, there's nothing to say that we have to wait 6 months before, which is the normal length of the moratorium, before taking action on this topic. We could take action in February after the state finalizes their recommendations if we chose to.
Absolutely.
All right.
Another question, sorry.
Sure.
So, if we did extend another 6 months, as Tom just pointed out, we could decide to shorten that. There are 48 days between the end of the state moratorium and when ours runs up.
Right.
If ours runs the full 6 months, Dave, maybe you have some insight into this. What's going to happen in that 48 days possibly? By overlapping?
So, if I can. MMA is concerned and has advocated for a local moratorium because if somebody gets a license in, then we have some obligations and they might be eligible for some grandfather status. So if in your deliberation you decided, for example, you weren't going to allow social clubs in certain zoning districts, but this application had come in, because if we didn't have a moratorium, we would have to accept the application.
And then you can't change once you accept it.
It's their court rules MMA was telling us that the court is kind of contradicting itself with this somewhat. It's my understanding. I was not in the, but yeah, I think that was the major concern, is what we're trying to do is not so much make a statement about what the town will eventually accept or not accept. It's rather to give the council and the community the opportunity to have a discussion once they have a better sense of what the law is going to be.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, now I'll ask the public if there's anyone. Susan?
Yeah, Susan Whitmore. I'd like to simply voice that the marijuana industry is not an industry that I'd like to see in the town of Orono. There are huge lists of reasons. Health concerns. There are numerous reports a person can Google and learn about the health effects of marijuana use. At the moment, the nation has been facing a drug epidemic, which is very serious. I think it's ironic that people would want to bring such industry to town, considering UMaine itself has a non-smoking policy. And also, oftentimes the marijuana industry is often accompanied by the industry of prostitution and body trafficking and black market activities. And I've been a resident of Roxbury, Mass. I've already faced such harassments of such industries in terms of people approaching me at least once a week and having to chase people from my block trying to solicit me. I'd rather not have to fight about such topics again, though I will.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else wish to speak for or against?
Just have some questions.
If you could just identify yourself.
Yep, my name's Adam Toothaker. I live out on Forest Ave. So as the moratorium by the state right now, if the town of Orono said we're not going to extend the moratorium here in Orono, it's still, the state moratorium is in effect and takes precedent over the town one. Is that correct? It's confusing because it's actually legal according to the federal government, but the state has voted it in, so now the county, the town can do something else. It's kind of...
So, like the town, I don't believe that the state is mandated to stay for the full length that they initially enacted their moratorium. So, yes, there's a state moratorium, but just like if the town council got to the end of its deliberation in February, it could decide to end it early, so could the state. The legislature is not required to live the whole length of the moratorium.
But as it stands right now, the state has a moratorium, so if the town said, we're not going to do it, and we're going to start accepting licenses for people to have different lounges and whatever, cannot do it because the state's is in effect.
Correct.
Okay.
The licenses the applications would queue up.
Okay, but as of now, you're just not even accepting it.
We don't accept them.
But if you did, they'd queue up, boom, okay, gotcha.
Can you put the screen back up with the timeline, please? Thank you.
Sure. Sure then.
So February 1st, the state ends, but it could end after the vote, or whatever. It could end at any time. It could.
The state is not obligated to keep its moratorium in effect any more than the council would be to keep it. It can make another decision.
Interesting. All right, thank you. And just one more thing in general, Susan brought up some good points about illegal drugs here and there. But of course, if it was legalized in this town, I don't think a lot of those problems that came along with the illegal drug trade would come with the legals.
There's Las Vegas.
Let's not get into a debate. Susan, let's not debate.
No, we do.
Yeah,
Vegas in Germany.
okay. And the only dog I have in this fight, I've never done marijuana in my life. I don't even drink alcohol. But the only dog I have in this fight is as a voter. And I like to see that the main voters wanted this. And I understand that the state has to take a while to get it going along. So I would just like to see it not take a really long time. And again, just for the fact that it's what, according to the democracy of the United States, this is what the people wanted. So again, I don't have a dog in this fight except for that one little thing. And thank you for clearing up the question, and thanks.
Sure.
So I would just say, Adam, I'm sorry, that council has already talked in committee about the fact that 67% of the votes cast in Orono were for the legalization of recreational marijuana, so they're well aware of that. My understanding, and they're my bosses, so I can't tell them what to do, but my understanding, based on the conversations that we've had, that it's really more about how do we bring this law into effect in our community in a way that's safe for our community, not we're going to try to upend what voters have put in place. Because when voters voted, they also voted an incredibly strong home rule component of the law to allow municipalities to regulate. And again, I would just say that this moratorium has absolutely no bearing on personal use or personal cultivation of marijuana.
Okay. All right, I will close public hearing H. And thank you, Avi, very much for your presentation.
Yep.
And move on to acknowledgements by council members. Megan?
I always get to go
All right. Well, you all know that I love the old news column in the Penobscot Times. Did you know that around this time 100 years ago there was snow and ice enough to put the relatively newfangled electric lights out and derail the trolley cars and ruin thousands of dollars of landscaping? So even though there's a chill in the air tonight, I think we're pretty lucky. But on a more serious note, by the time we hold our next full council meeting, folks out there will have elected a new member to this body. So this is my reminder to get out there and vote on November 7th on campus at the university. Or you can fill out your absentee ballot at the town office if you want to do it on your own time. Don't be afraid of the construction. You can come in. There are a number of ballot questions this year, too, including infrastructure improvements and the ongoing quest for affordable health care. So do your civic duty and vote, please.
Tom? Thank you.
Wow, okay. Okay, it's working. And yeah, there are a couple of other issues that are on the state part of the election. I think there's a casino coming up and various other things. It's at the field house, and if you want, you can also request the absentee voting through the mail or email, and they'll send you out and you send it out through the U.S. mail, and you just return it the same way or drop it off. So there are lots of opportunities, and I encourage you to vote.
Thank you. Tom?
I'm all set.
Sam?
I just wanted to acknowledge that there was a candidates night a little while ago, how many, 1 week, 2 weeks? It was a while ago. Anyway, and it was great to see the turnout. But yeah, take a look at the candidates and vote. It's kind of exciting, so.
Great. I
There you
did.
go.
I YouTubed it. It was very interesting. And I would also just like to note, on November 13th, we have several public hearings coming up. One on the Main Street Office Overlay District, one on student homes. I guess there's only two.
On that topic, if I may, I did not attend the last full committee meeting, but I did read the minutes, and there was an item on the minutes about sending out notices on these public hearings, and I just wanted to make sure that that was still going to happen, because I know there is significant community interest in this topic.
So normally what we would do, Tom, is do the regular publications in the Penobscot Times, online, in postings around the community. When there is a defined district that is impacted by ordinance, we also send individual notice to each taxpayer.
Great. Thank you.
All right, moving on from acknowledgements to unfinished business. I don't think we have any. The consent agenda, I will take a motion to move the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Moving on to new business, Order 17187, order adopting a 6-month moratorium ordinance extension on retail marijuana establishments and retail marijuana social clubs. I'll take a motion, please.
I move approval of Order 17187, and I'd just like to emphasize that my motion to approve this is not a statement for or against social clubs or retail sales, just giving us time to work on it.
Sure. Is there?
I second that with a much shorter second than Tom's explanation.
Is there anyone wishing to comment or debate further on it?
Yeah, I just want to draw a line under, I think a lot of folks have tonight, but I just also want to draw a line under this idea that we really just want to make sure that we are getting all of the input that we can get, that we see what the state is going to do, that we have all of the information before we make a decision, and that includes public hearing as well. So being able to sort through all of that on our own timetable seems like a really wise choice to me.
I agree. I think, just an abundance of caution with something like this is very important at this time of the process, so we move forward to it, not after it happens. So.
Yep. And the only thing I would like to add is I would encourage council that if we could take bite-sized pieces of this as we go along, so that we're not trying to cram it into 2 weeks at the end of the moratorium. Sophie?
That's a great idea.
So your chair actually thinks about things in advance, so she and I already had a conversation, and if you're going to pass this, the next step, I think, would be, let's list out all of the elements that we know. Are there things that we know we're fine with, that you don't think need to be regulated? Are there concerns that council has, so that staff can begin to develop the presentation, the education, and the technical advice to get you where you need to go? My question for council after you take this vote is going to be, to which committee would you like this to go? Is this a community development? Is this operations? Or is this council workshop? So many choices.
Which one is that morning one? I don't go.
No way. You're not getting out of this one.
Nope, finance doesn't work for this one. Well, let's first take a vote on Order 17187. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Moratorium is in place. Second, can we get back to you on that council committee meeting?
Sure, you want to talk about it? Want to talk about it at all committee?
Sure.
Could you guys think about it, and we could, maybe I could work with the planning staff to give you some proposal for kind of a timeline. I too don't want to get to the end and have nothing.
I was going to request that we actually get a firm timeline starting now.
Well, so the issue, Sam, is that ultimately the timeline is up to you guys.
Well,
We
we're
can
going to do
propose
that.
something.
Just not that morning meeting, then we'll be doing that.
No, the morning meeting will not be doing that.
Okay.
But we're still somewhat constrained by what the state is going to do. So we can start it, but we're not putting anything in stone until we've got that.
No, but at least articulating each item that we're going to be addressing with their, whenever the state decides to get out of the way.
I just don't want to spin our wheels and then have to come revisit it again. But I think if there's things that we think we're good with, let's make the list.
I'd just like to check. I know I'm not going to be here October 30th, and I just want to make sure that we're going to have a quorum, and maybe Nancy could just check with people to make sure there's going to be enough people here.
Nancy's going to take a note and do that very thing.
All right. Have we had enough on this topic? All right. Moving on to Order 17-188. Order authorizing the town manager to submit an application to the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Protection as part of the Maine Technology Park Wetlands Mitigation Project with a commitment to transfer the Taylor Road parcel, a portion of Tax Map 9, Lot 2, expend 50% of the application fee estimated at $2,125, with Bennick Road Associates paying the remaining fee, with funds drawn from the Maine Technology Park Omnibus Municipal Tax Increment Financing District Development Program funds, and further, upon approval of the application from Army Corps of Engineers and DEP, authorize the town manager to execute any and all documents necessary to transfer the Taylor Road parcel to the Orono Land Trust, along with a stewardship fee payment of $7,500, also drawn from the Maine Technology Park Omnibus Municipal TIF District Development Program funds. Someone could repeat that motion, please? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Just before Evan starts, I just again will state that I am recusing myself from this vote because I have done work on this matter with the Orono Land Trust.
In
my capacity as a attorney. Thank you.
Good evening, Evan Rickert, consultant to the town on planning matters. This is, as you know, has been in the works now for 4+ years at the initiative of the Orono Economic Development Corporation, wanting to take a look at the Maine Technology Park and try to understand what its potential future development would be. And the Orono Economic Development Corporation went ahead and with the help of WVRC Architects and Engineers, developed a concept plan that would take advantage of developable land in the tech park, whereas you know there has not been any new development since the early 2000s. You know, what the natural resource limitations were in that area. In the process of doing that, OEDC came to better understand what the limitations are in the technology park with respect to wetlands. And there are two limitations. One is that evidently back in the 1980s, when the town developed Godfrey Drive, it did not get all the permits that were apparently necessary as of that time from the Army Corps of Engineers. Well, I'll use the term allegedly because this all came to be understood in retrospect by all the regulators as well as by the town, so it's necessary to resolve that outstanding issue to be assured that any new development in the technology park can in fact proceed. The alleged violation is 1.38 acres by a certain formula that requires a certain amount of land and mitigation or a certain amount of cash put into a wetlands mitigation fund. And we've talked a number of times with the Army Corps representatives and DEP representatives about that, OEDC taking the lead on that over the last couple of years. But in addition, the concept plan would alter some other edges of wetlands on some of the available parcels that are primarily developable, but still have some of the wetland intruding upon them. And so the concept plan would alter about 1 3/4 additional acres of wetland if it were developed in full. Need to emphasize that it's a concept plan. There are no applications. And should there actually be development in the future proposed, it might not take the form of this concept plan itself, but likely would take some general, be compatible with the general form, which is kind of a clustering of commercial buildings on land owned by either the town or by Benneck Road Associates. Those are the two sets of parcels we are talking about. There are a few other lots that are not owned by either of those parties. The Army Corps and the DEP really like the concept plan that was developed, but OEDC and the town came to understand that we really need to take care of that 30-year-old issue that came to light in the early 2000s and move ahead with this application to mitigate that, as well as to anticipate the alteration of about 1 3/4 acres of additional wetland. So over the last couple of years now, it's been almost probably 3 years, the staff, in conversation with the council and with the Orono Land Trust and the regulators, have looked for possible ways, what the best way to mitigate the wetlands issue would be, and arrived ultimately at a portion of a town-owned parcel off of Taylor Road. This is a land that is adjacent to, but not including, the old closed-out landfill. It extends from Taylor Road back to the old town, Orono town line. It's adjacent to other conservation land. It contains about 112 acres. About 14 of those acres appear to be highly developable should anybody want to, should the town want to release that land for development. That some of that developable land includes some unusual pine stands, which the Orono Land Trust indicates is something of value that should be preserved as a pine stand, if at all possible. It has a variety of important natural resources, including uplands around vernal pools, and it's some significant wildlife habitat as identified by Inland Fish and Wildlife, as well as a large portion that's adjacent to and part of the Caribou Bog. In informal conversations and meetings with the Army Corps, they've indicated that this land would very likely be very suitable for the mitigation purposes related to both taking care of the past issue and pre-permitting the potential alteration of up to 1 3/4 acres of additional wetland. Fair amount of activities taking place to put together the application, including in-depth discussions with the Orono Land Trust as to whether they would accept the land as stewards and what that would entail. Preparing the deed for transfer, preparing a conservation easement that we think would pass muster with the Army Corps of Engineers, doing a brownfields assessment, which is a standard requirement by a certified land trust, which the Orono Land Trust is, and assembling materials. And we also hired Alita Berman, a wetlands hydrologist, to verify wetland boundaries in the technology park, and to take that verified natural resource information and impose it on the concept plan to really understand what the impact of the concept plan would be on those pools. This would not affect, there are a number of vernal pools in the tech park. On town-owned land, it would not affect any of those. In fact, it is well over 250 feet away from what would be considered high-value wetlands and wildlife habitat. So with all of that, the application is now largely, some Benneck Road Associates has agreed to be the joint applicant on this, and has agreed to share the application fee to the DEP. It'd be around $2,125. That's a rounded number. There's some, it might be $4,122.42 or something like that. It's based on a formula. We would be, one of the conditions from the Orono Land Trust, as they require with all land acquisitions at this point, is a one-time stewardship fee. That would be $7,500. And if authorized, we would complete the assembly of the application and send in the application. The land transfer would not occur unless and until the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEP both approved of this and issued the requisite permits. Should there be proposed development in the tech park as a result of all of this, then those individual projects would still need to pursue final permitting from local, state, and federal entities. But the concept plan would be there as a guideline for what we hope could be done out there, and with relatively light impact to the natural resources in that section, leaving intact most of the remaining wetlands.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Evan?
I would just have a question on the stewardship fee. How was that determined, and does the land trust have
They have a
history
yes.
of requiring those fees?
They,
that's something I'd never heard of.
They do. As Land Trust a few years ago got national certification, and one of the practices of that certification is to have a stewardship fee. They may have even begun implementing that beforehand, but there's a formula, and the formula in broad strokes arrives at this number for a land of 112 acres. And it's there, they will have to do an annual review of the land to make sure that all the aspects of the easement are honored. And by the way, the easement includes reserved rights to the town to go on that land and to do whatever is necessary, whatever the town is required to do to monitor impacts of to make sure that the closed out landfill is functioning properly, monitoring wells, and so forth. So all that's in place, but the land trust is required to would be monitoring this annually. Should there ever be any legal expenses, of course, that's a lot more than they'd probably be a lot more than $7,500. But it is now standard practice, and they have a formula, and this is the number calculated as a result of that formula.
Earlier this evening, Councillor Sullivan called to let me know that she couldn't be here tonight, and when I asked her if there was anything of concern or that she wanted to make sure was expressed tonight, she indicated that she just really wanted to make sure it was on the record that Council did quite a bit of negotiation back and forth regarding how much land was going to be part of this transfer, and that there is a significant developable piece that Council carved out of this to keep for the community.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. I think probably almost 2 years ago when we were discussing with the council, we actually came forward with a somewhat larger section of land. The council said that's too much. We'd like it to be no more than this if possible. And we discussed that with the Corps, the DEP, and they did not seem to be concerned that this was insufficient. I mean, we'll find out. There's nothing, no givens. But Judy is absolutely correct. There are actually two parts of the town-owned land, significant parts of the town-owned land that would not be part of this and could be used as the town sees fit in the future.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? No? Thank you, Evan. We'll take a vote on Order 17-188. All those in favor? All right. with 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Moving on to future agenda items and items of concern. Start with Sam this time.
No.
No, I won't start with Sam, or no?
No, you can start with me. I have nothing
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Tom?
Nor do I.
Tom?
I'm good for the moment.
Megan? All right. Sam, coming back to you just in case? No?
No, still nothing.
Still nothing, okay. Public petitions, I don't think we have any. Public comments? Susan?
So I read a lot of news reports and try to bring something to council each month. 2 concerns, health concerns. One, there's been an outbreak of hepatitis A that began approximately 1 month ago in San Diego. It has now spread to the city of Los Angeles as well. And I mentioned such. It's been mostly amongst the population of homeless and drug users. And, I wish such wasn't a concern, though last November, the town of Orono lost 2 students to drug use. Therefore, I'm inclined to mention the outbreak. It may be located on another coast, though health concerns. 1 month's time, it's gone from one city to another. It's spread, and people have been dying. The other health concern is kind of more remote. Madagascar has recently had another outbreak of bubonic plague. So that's rampant again. It's considered, attempt to recall, one of the largest outbreaks it's had in years. If I'm remembering correctly, the last one occurred, I think it was 2015. I could be incorrect on that. I just read it last night, so I didn't retain the dates, though. It wasn't all that long ago. And the last one it had wiped out, it was devastating, according to video documentary. So Madagascar is responsible for vanilla. That's why vanilla prices escalated so much, was because they're trying to recover from the last epidemic. Well, bubonic plague's back. And so I urge people, anyone doing business in Madagascar, there are some people around. Madagascar also sends not exactly precious stones, though unique rocks and gems. They do have some commerce with the United States. So I urge people, perhaps cease imports from Madagascar. And aside from that, I hope everyone has a happy Halloween.
Thank you very much, Susan. Anyone else? No. Move on to the brief town manager's update.
Here, I heard brief. Just a few things, if I can run down through them, and then stop me anytime if there's... I just want to clarify for folks that absentee voting from now until the Thursday before the election, you don't have to give a reason for absentee voting. You can come in and either vote at the town office or call or write asking for a ballot. But Friday and Monday, you must provide a reason, and it has to meet the statute. So if you just don't want to go up on campus or deal with the lines on election day, make sure you vote before Thursday. Okay? That would be the Thursday before the 7th. Folks that were at the Finance and Operations Committee got a preview, but our fire chief is back to work part-time. So we are very happy to have Rob. You will see him in and out, and if you need anything, specifically we have some folks here who interact with him. He is back on the job half-time, so we're very excited about that. We've had considerable construction happening at the town hall. Been very happy with what we've accomplished underground. now you're beginning to see what we're accomplishing at ground. I think it's going to look wonderful when we're done. The pavement on the last section is going to be put down, we think, on Wednesday, which is great. We're hoping to see the bulk of the work complete by the end of the week. The one thing, yep, right here at Town Hall. The one thing that we might see a delay on is the installation of the lights, because we're having to coordinate with other vendors to have that happen. But the public will be able to park in the parking lot and just walk up without having to play the up the stairs, down the stairs game, which will be good. To also let you know that, yes, the town cemetery has been posted prohibiting hunting. This Councilor Perry was kind enough to remind staff that we said we would do that, and so we got that done. If you go out to see the lovely signs that are there, I would also encourage folks to look at the front section of the cemetery. The crew has been hard at work. They've been pulling up stones and putting them back down with a better bed under them of crushed stone, and really making them lined up. They look nice. We also have a cemetery, a headstone expert coming this fall to give us some help understanding what we need to do to be able to fix the old headstones. I have called upon Councilor Perry because he has always had great interest in the cemetery. But if there's somebody else who has an interest in trying to create the plan, work with staff and creating the plan, be happy to have another counselor join us. That's, just let me know. So it looks so beautiful that, you know, one of the privileges I have as town manager is to give the final okay on the cover of the annual report. And this year, our esteemed photographer, Nancy Ward, has come up with great pictures of the Civil War monument. Nope, this one coming up, Tom.
Oh, okay.
The Civil War monument, Meadow Savoy Park with the additional work that staff did this last fiscal year, and the Orono Village Green. So we will have a nice cover as only Nancy can put together for us. Just want to draw people's attention to the fact that Halloween is coming, and the town is putting on a special event that night. We have Trick or Treat, which we've done for a few years downtown, where area businesses are trick-or-treating with kids, and Mitch supports that through Parks and Rec. This past Saturday, we had a fall festival at the library. But with the trick-or-treat, Dave Mylan and the economic development staff is pairing that with a trunk-or-treat as well. So if anybody wants to trick-or-treat or trunk-or-treat, you should be able to do that in downtown Orono on Halloween, 4 to 6.
So what is a trunk or treat?
People decorate their cars and open up their trunks, and the candy is in the trunk.
For some people who live more remotely and don't get children coming by. For Judy.
Yes, absolutely. So, and the other thing that we have happening on Halloween, we're actually have opening night for a run of a production of Carrie, the Stephen King. So the community theater is putting on Carrie, which is pretty cool.
Carrie the musical.
Yeah.
There will be blood.
Yeah, I just know that I had to okay Smoke Machine.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. Just an announcement that we have our annual mandatory safety training on Thursday that got announced in the Observer online. We'll be putting it up. If it hasn't gone up today, it will go up tomorrow on the board out front, because that closes the town office down for the day. November 1st is a meeting that I would encourage all counselors to come to. It's and members of the community. This is our pedestrian safety meeting on November 1st from 6 to 8 p.m. right here in council chambers. The town is partnering with Maine Department of Transportation to look at pedestrian safety in our community and identify places that we need to look at improving safety. This would be an outstanding time for people to come out and talk about Main Street as an example. We've got a big project planned. It would be very helpful to get community input as to where the dangerous spots are, and it will also help us when we submit a grant application for funding for that project. So, when last we came together, I talked about a large housing complex that we were having some concerns about disorderly events. Working with the chief of police, and if I may say, I think we've got a pretty amazing police chief. We worked with the police chief and our planning department to pull out the initial planning board approval for the development and highlighted for them what they said they were going to do in front of the planning board, and lo and behold, we didn't have any problems on homecoming. They went out and hired significant private security, so I think we're seeing that change, which is very nice. We have a community development committee meeting coming up on October 26th, Thursday the 26th at 6 p.m. And this one is going to be focused primarily on public safety. I have the chief coming in. We're going to be talking about hunting on town land, an ordinance prohibiting jumping off bridges, unruly gatherings, disorderly property, and fee for police service, those three ordinances that kind of work in concert with each other. And we might try to throw a couple of other small things in there, but I think that will be a good meeting and start to move some of council's work plan forward. Speaking of the police department, we have been put on notice by 2 of our employees that they are in the final stages of the hiring process for the state police. So on the one hand, we're very happy that we are training people that other agencies think are amazing. Unfortunately, it means that they leave us. So we talked about this in committee last time we hired, but when we hire a new police officer, it costs us about $13,000 in wages while they're at the academy, and $17,000 in wages when we're often waiting for the academy to start, because unfortunately people don't come in and right when the academy is coming. And then to cover open shifts and overtime, we don't cover all of them while they're at the academy, but time and a half for people, that's about $20,000. So training somebody is not a cheap endeavor. The last time we had somebody, we came to you and said that what would be most helpful is if we could find somebody who's already been through the academy, so that when we hire them, they come on staff and they're all trained and we're doing field training time instead. When we hire an academy grad, we're talking about $10,000 to $12,000 for the field training time and the coverage of the open shifts, because even though they're a body under our CALIA accreditation, we can't have them by themselves until they successfully complete field training. So that is a considerable difference. With that often comes a payback to another community when we hire somebody if they don't have more than 5 years out of the academy, and that ranges anywhere from $6,000 to $30,000. So to put that into perspective, we hired an individual recently who came with the academy training. He cost us we had to pay the University of Maine $12,000 because they had trained him. And he, at that time, the council authorized me to offer a $10,000 bonus. That bonus was $10,000 paid in weekly installments over 5 years. So $2,000 a year. If they stayed all 5 years, they get $10,000. So he ended up costing us $22,000 as opposed to 13 and 17 and 20. The 12 plus the 10, in addition to his regular wage. So with these two people that we know are going to be leaving us, I went ahead and told the chief that he was fine to advertise. He has since come back and said, I still have the same problem where I have many people without a lot of experience, and he would really like to offer the incentive again to try to get somebody in who's had the academy training, knowing that if you go through the academy, likely, especially if you work in another agency, you have more experience on the road.
Sophie, are we getting paid for these two that are leaving us?
Yes. Yes, we are getting, I had that number, 36,000 total for them. So we'll have some brought in. But just because last time I asked council, it was very clear that I was being given permission to do it once. And so my question for council is, are you okay with doing it again? Are you wanting to send this to committee, or would you be okay with us advertising that now?
So last I heard, Bangor was also offering something similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's several police agencies, so we're not out here on our lonesome by any means.
It's almost the new normal right now, it feels.
And in other states, it's like 3 and 4 times that. But yes, it kind of is the new normal.
The 36,000 we're getting, that's not really income, that's sort of repayment for what we invested in these, right?
So you could look at it that way.
I look at it a bunch of different ways.
I know. So every year we adopt a budget that has revenue projections and expense projections. And when we had to make that payment for the people that we sent in these people, it was in a different budget year. Ultimately, it all hits fund balance, either negatively or positively. But for us this year, when that comes in, it doesn't go it's not like we have a outstanding receivable. It simply hits as a revenue for this year. A revenue that staff doesn't spend without council's approval.
I for one would be in favor of moving forward with the incentive plan, hopefully being able to attract experienced officers. I think it worked out well for us the last time. There's no guarantee that that'll be the way it happens again, but I think that's our best chance of getting experienced people, and I'd support it.
I agree with Tom. I think it's important to have a balanced police department, and age being a balance act. Mature experience, I guess, not age.
Especially with our population. It's nice to have police officers older than the students.
I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, it sounds as though, I mean, it's also, in addition to experience, it's a cost-saving measure ultimately, and it encourages someone to stay if they have to, in order to receive the bonus, to put in a certain amount of time. So
I do think that it's important for counselors to kind of keep in the forefront that when citizens see the ad, they see $10,000 signing bonus. And we can put caveats in the words of it, but we heard during the budget people thinking that we were just giving somebody $10,000 to say that they'd come to Orono. And just keep that in mind if you get questions, that it is a payout over time.
Well, specify signing bonus for experienced police academy graduates.
They have to be from the police academy.
Yep.
We would allow for a waiver. So if somebody, for example, was a police officer in New York State and they came to the Criminal Justice Academy and applied for a waiver that is as good as a blue pin for us. It puts us in the same legal standing.
So we're in the same situation as they are throughout the country. There aren't a whole lot of applicants. It's a dangerous job. It's thankless in some respects. And we're not the only people having to try all kinds of things to get good people in here. So it's not that we're trying to get the premium over premium. This is just to get what's normal now, unfortunately.
I have no reservations.
So based on what I've heard tonight, I'm going to go ahead and do that and know that I have your backing, so I appreciate that. And that would be the end of my manager's report, which I hope I've kept brief.
Great. All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you.